The future in 360 degrees. We're back to resume our program in our second day of activities, and now we will watch the panel Progress and the Catastrophe.
E agora nós vamos assistir ao painel com o tema O Progresso
Our
e a
panelists,
Catástrofe.
one of our panelists
O nosso
invited
painelista
is Élcio
convidado
Batista,
é o sociólogo e professor Élcio Batista.
The questions
As perguntas
could
para
be
os nossos
to
convidados
WhatsApp,
poderão ser feitas pelo
local code area in
WhatsApp
Ceará,
número
999
85, que é o nosso código aqui do Ceará, 999660352.
State Secretary
Para este painel,
of
nós
Environment,
teremos como
Artur
debatedor
Bruno.
o secretário do Meio Ambiente do Estado do Ceará,
Bruno.
Artur Bruno.
The floor is yours.
Agora é com você,
Have a
Bruno.
good panel.
Os trabalhos estão nas suas mãos.
I'd
Bom painel
like
para
to
você e
say
para o Élcio.
morning to you all, to congratulate
Eu quero desejar bom dia a todas e a todos,
event
parabenizar
producers, a very interesting
os
event, very
produtores do
agile,
evento. É um evento muito interessante, dinâmico, ágil,
moderators,
e com
debaters, and
grupos de
exhibitors, with no doubt,
debatedores, moderadores,
great
expositores,
importance.
sem
And this
dúvida, muito
theme is
interessante
very
todos eles.
important one,
E esse
maybe
tema, ele é um
most
tema
decisive.
muito importante. Talvez
the
seja
most
o
decisive for
tema
the
mais
life
decisivo
of
para as nossas
companies and
vidas,
to the
para a
organization
vida
of the
das
state,
empresas,
the contemporaneous state, and I would like
né, o
to
Estado
I would make
contemporâneo.
the
Então, eu
observation
faria
that
a seguinte
give
observação
you
e lanço aqui uma pergunta para o Élcio Batista, que é um sociólogo,
food for thought, and mostly
tem muitas
with
leituras,
Élcio
que tem
Batista, a
participado
great
de muitos
sociologist,
debates, de muitas exposições,
very
inclusive sobre esse tema.
experienced one. So the 18th
Élcio,
century,
o século XVIII
has been the
foi considerado o
century
século
of
das
light.
luzes.
So the
Lá os
philosophers, the
filósofos
illuminists, they
iluministas
defended the
defendiam que o
industrialization,
mundo teria que se modernizar, teria que se
modernization.
industrializar.
It helped,
Isso acabou acontecendo
with
inicialmente
England
na
by the end
Inglaterra,
of the
né, que
18th
depois virou Reino
century.
Unido, ainda no final do século XVIII. Durante o século XIX, a industrialização, a revolução nos transportes, com os trens, com as máquinas a vapor, com a eletricidade, depois com as siderúrgicas, as termoelétricas, a revolução dos combustíveis fósseis. Tudo isso gerou um grande crescimento econômico no mundo, isso gerou o imperialismo, a disputa das grandes potências, inclusive levou a 2 guerras mundiais. E naquela época, ainda no século XIX, muitos pensadores, inclusive militantes políticos, chegavam a quebrar as máquinas, né? Eram os chamados ludistas, porque um dos líderes chamava-se Lud, porque aquilo estava desempregando a população. Quer dizer, o progresso, tão sonhado pelos iluministas, estava prejudicando, sobretudo, os mais pobres, com o desemprego, né? Com a desigualdade aumentando. Então, a gente traz essa questão para o século XXI. Nós estamos com um crescimento econômico nunca visto na humanidade, mas os estudos de muitos pensadores, economistas, revelam que a desigualdade está aumentando. Os ambientalistas dizem que o mundo poderá viver uma catástrofe enorme com as mudanças climáticas. Né? 2015, a Conferência de Paris reuniu os chefes de Estado e de governo a temperatura média até 2100 em 1,5 grau. Já aumentamos 1,1. Então, todas as pesquisas revelam que se nós não mudarmos esse rumo, nós vamos chegar a aumentar 2, 3, até 4 graus na temperatura média da Terra, com todas as consequências que isso trará. Né? Ao mesmo tempo, nós estamos vivendo aí uma revolução, né, na tecnologia da informação, na biotecnologia, com consequências futuras muito complicadas para a humanidade. Então, a pergunta que se faz é a seguinte: o progresso que foi tão sonhado pelos iluministas é uma catástrofe? Ou a saída para a humanidade garantir que haja desenvolvimento e, ao mesmo tempo, essas questões que eu coloquei possam ser resolvidas com outras políticas públicas, com engajamento de empresas, com envolvimento da sociedade para evitar essa catástrofe, né, que é o
So, the first place, thank you for your question. And I'd like to during the participation of Ceará Global, and with this theme of this panel, the panel theme is progress a catastrophe? It's a question. So I will ask, I will answer this question with possible solutions. This question is linked to the born of the most hegemonic philosophies in history, anchored in a philosophy anchored in the idea of progress. It's been present with the Illuminists and present with almost every authors from the 18th, 19th, 20th centuries, even those critics of the capitalism like with the Marxism, they believed in progress as well because they understood that history was walking to a linear development, and we would overcome capitalism with new ways of production, with no social class, a totally equal society, kind of utopia. So, but why this philosophy of progress is too much potent, and how today we are living two major problems related to this philosophy development. So the first 17th and 18th centuries are marked by the ascensions, increased the rise of revolution. So the English, the American, and the French. On the other hand, the thinking revolution, so the raising of the new science, the modern science, anchored on a hand by rationalism and empiricism as well, but both advocating for a new modern reason. So in these political revolutions, they had as goals, as objectives, to free man from the tradition and from the blood. In other words, the absolutist regime, so sometimes based on tradition, on names, family, trajectory of a group of people, or based on bloodshed, so nobility based on bloodshed. And it's been affirmed only by strength, by power. In that moment, we've got the republics and the democratic regime. So all of this discussion with substitution of power, not anymore using violence. So it's the main feature of democracy. An alternance of power based on the individual choices, with a dispute that not involves war between people. And then we got free from this tradition and from the absolutist regime. So we've blossomed the republics and the democracy, and well, as incredible it may be, we're living a democracy crisis, a crisis of that idea as well that is repercuting right now. So the second point is that the scientific revolutions that started the modern science, they want to free the man, they want to free the man from nature. So the modern science came to free us from nature. Well, how can it free us from nature? So dominating over the production process from the industrialization process. And now we don't depend on the nature cycles, for example, winter, summer, and fall and spring. We do not depend on these cycles. I can produce outside these cycles. I can produce, for example, the technology and use take water to where it we didn't have water. For example, we from Ceará, we're producing flowers, fruits, and even wheat, new cultures, maybe cultures that will have for the whole year because of technology. In other words, science. So the man with this progress philosophy frees themselves from nature, dominating nature within their own interests, regardless the inherent logic of the natural processes, the production of life and the reproduction of this life itself. So the crisis today, environmental crisis. So just the theme about catastrophe. So progress on one hand, from the political point, put us in this in front of this dilemma of the environmental crisis in Brazil, for example, and in the same way, this blossoming of this philosophy and its development regarding regarding the liberty of man from nature. So it's a dilemma that if we are about to destroy the nature environment and then we'll be disappearing with nature. Do we have a choice? We have another way? Yes, these philosophies, they were born in the 19th century, but the men, they keep developing, including morally. Kohlberg, for instance, a great geneticist, a great scientist, he used to tell about the development, the moral development of men. So if the moral development of men, it occurs in each individual, it also occurs within the whole society. So I can tell you, we've been developing, we've been criticizing this progress philosophies and initiated most of all during the 20th century. By the second half, it started to happen a very strong criticism to this progress philosophy and where this philosophy would lead us. And that's why we're watching our democracy crisis, but we're trying to find solutions for this crisis. And also we're living a crisis, if I may say, regarding development, economic development, that will lead us to an exit as well. And answer your question, to answer your question, yes, we have an exit, and the way out is within man, within technology, within science, as incredible it may seem. But we need to change epistemologically, that we need to deal things with complexity, not only thinking unidimensionally, but multidimensionally. So we need to regroup our knowledge to find a way out. Okay, Élcio. Let's think on a triad: the society, state, with all its powers, and corporations. So something very interesting is happening in the international organisms. United Nations in 2015 in New York, for example, reunited all the countries and opted in for the SDGs, orienting all the countries to develop policies based on 17 SDGs. So by the same time, this we have a movement in the international investment funds with an agenda that's called ASG. So ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So great investors, they want to invest in companies that are worried about environment, about the social matter, inequalities and opportunities, and the good governance, so an ethic governance, fighting against corruption. I would like to give an example from the state government. The governor, Camilo Santana, created some instruments towards this perspective. So as an example, by the end of last year, the Legislative Assembly approved an initiative from the Camilo Santana creating a sustainable award to recognize all the companies in the state of Ceará worried about this ESG. So Governor Camilo Santana created a product, it's a green label. People who works with recycling, they have 60% of tax reduction of particulate ICMS called. So renewable energy, Ceará is one of the states that is broadening the most solar and wind power, and also with a good experience with natural gas. Our CE Gas is a company in Brazil that manages most the renewable natural gas, 15% renewable. It's being used. So is that the way out? Governments and corporations must follow these leads, is that sustainable development? Yes, no doubt. And the Sustainable Development Goals, they point out to 2030. In 2030, we should have achieved the 17 or SDGs. It would mean humanity much more, as if I may say, much more organized and integrated with much less inequalities. So the pandemic of COVID-19, we've had light upon all these SDGs. Are they reachable or not? Many people are pessimistic about the future. And just because COVID-19, because economic crisis, and I myself, I have a different vision. I think this moment we're living in a crisis related to progress, that we have two main important points: the democracy crisis and a crisis related to economic growth and destruction of nature. These are the two moments, two super important moments of this progress philosophy crisis. We are in a moment of an economic and a health crisis, worldwide health crisis, an economic crisis. And we are in a movement right now to transform technology in all the aspects of our lives. Well, by the same time, Bruno, it's important to say that this democratic crisis, talking about the issue, the subject you brought, we have a governance crisis. We have in a moment of governance crisis. The international bodies are not in being, are not. They have no credibility anymore. So, as the organs, as this under national states and the national states and the global governance is in crisis. You see the WHO, the WHO, the position of the United States regarding WHO. So we are living all these crises, but at the same time, we have technology in our favor. It is super important in this moment. So we have two ways to acknowledge this moment regarding future. So to be extremely pessimistic and or nihilist or rational optimistic, to be optimistic or to be a foolish. We have maybe 5 positions. I would prefer the rational optimistic, if I may say. The rational optimistic is that person that sees, that forecasts what we're living now. We have great opportunities to reach the SDGs and even accelerate them. I can give an example. So among the SDGs, we have one called to eliminate extreme poverty around the world. Well, what happens now? The biggest discussion right now is a basic revenue that will eliminate sort of the poverty regarding revenue income. So, but poverty is multidimensional. But regarding the wage, regarding income, we have a solution. We have an awakening that inequality is a problem that and should be faced. That's why I'm a rational optimistic, because in this crisis we have the best conditions to reorganize the world, reorganize the global governance systems, reorganize the regional governance systems, to change the systems within the countries themselves towards these directions of the sustainable development. Why? Because we need to. We are in need because of this group of crises we're passing through. Oh, so the state of Ceará, as you reminded us, we are walking towards this direction. Well, the renewable energy, for instance, is one of them. But you, Bruno, as an environment secretary, together with Governor Camila Santana, you contributed to increase the number of the full protection reserves in Ceará. For example, after 40 years of fight, we have the Cocós Park fully regulated park after 40 years. So, and as we are discussing with people from all the areas from society, but I think we have many entrepreneurs, many investors following us. So the change of mindset in the private sector has been very important. So the business persons, they are understanding that business sustainability depends on the sustainability, environmental sustainability combined with economic growth. In other words, I usually say that in this debate about the environment, I can't look at only one vector. I may look to three vectors that form what is called environmental. So nature, society, and economy. I need to find a balance between these three vectors. And I see in this moment a great opportunity to the future. I believe that we'll leave, stronger from this process. And the greatest ally of us will be knowledge. If knowledge brought us here, knowledge will lead us to a way out, to another development, much more sustainable. Also, you touched some interesting points. So, despite the moment we're living, and crisis is opportunity, right? So, Charles Darwin has a very interesting statement. He said, "Not the strongest or the smartest that will win, but the best, those who can adapt best to the environment they live." So this crisis, this situation, this pandemic situation, in a future perspective, how can you see this is in a way changing a guideline from the federal government? Federal government is working strongly this Brazil's basic income, so called Renda Brasil. But at the same time, we have some critics that it can lead to a so big public deficit that it will create an economic weakness to the country. So within this pandemic perspective, how can you see, you as a knower of the numbers of Ceará? So Ceará state is seen as an organized state from the financial point of view. It's a state organized in the short, medium, and long term. We are launching Ceará 2050, bringing the SDGs to the 17 goals to this plan. Ceará is a national and international reference, and the K-12 schools, the basic education. So, and we've had the mobilization from society to guarantee the educational fund approved in the National Congress that will foster the basic education in Brazil. So this pandemic will disorganize our state. How do you find this? How do you see this last decade organizations and the next years? Well, the state of Ceará in the last 30 years consolidated itself as a reference on tax policies, stabilizing them, and with a commitment with all the political class that is fundamental to keep the good fiscal health of the state in order to be able to do the necessary investments in the health, education, and infrastructure, public security fields. That's what we've been doing the last 30 years. So that's why Ceará is highlighted in lots of public policies, for example, infrastructure, so the health or public security. I was talking about technology, right? So this digital belt, there's no state in Brazil with a digital belt as we have, and it's a mandatory structure for the 21st century, and for this moment we're living, to have more efficiency. So the use of internet technology as we are using right now is fundamental. This is more sustainability. So we didn't get our cars, to move, to transport, and we are here discussing and impacting lots of people now live, but afterwards, because all of this is recorded. So you can imagine how this is fundamental. So Ceará has this tradition. So Camila Santana, governor, respected, is has been respectful to this tradition, and he's been very correct in using the public resources. So I believe Ceará will leave this process with more advantages, because we've been organizing, because we did our homework, we have no huge debts, we have all our payments duly paid, and we've been doing investments in health, the public health system, and that's why we are leading the run comparing to other states, and we can use the good trust in the public entities in order to our citizens understand the role and the value to have a very well structured state, because we're living also a trust crisis. One of the problems in Brazil and Latin America, we live in a trust crisis. People are not trusting each other, and people are not trusting the system, and this mistrust regarding the system is, it's not very good, because, for example, would you pay taxes if you do not trust the tax system? So in order to the citizens and to the entrepreneurs to pay what they need to pay, we need to the government to use properly this money and to invest in public policies that produces actual well-being. But if people do not trust the system, how can we build something better? So we need to overcome this trust crisis in Brazil. But in Ceará, it's been the opposite. We've been constructing a society based on trust. We didn't achieve everything. We have a lot to do. But our governor, Camila Santana, he's committed with this. That's why I don't believe we'll leave this pandemic with a more difficult situation comparing to the other states. We'll leave even better, and we'll be in avant-garde again. So, but Brazil may do the reformations necessary. So by the federal government, for example, we don't have a proposal to do a new program with a new basis, but it's only the overlapping of lots of projects, the elimination of some projects in order to grant help, financial help that is not circumstantial, then it turns to be permanent. I think we should focus in a fiscal and tax restructuration that would guarantee more equality in within the Brazilian society. And in this process, we would create a process of a basic wage or income. Well, I'll come back to the nature questions, the technology questions. I think it's very interesting for us in Northeast, in Ceará especially. People used to say that nature in Ceará was not favorable, and one of the reasons to be poor was the climate issues. We have 600 millimeters of rainfall per year. We have a high temperature here, and we have a low humidity during the whole year. Our soils are shallow and rocky, and it would make impossible the development of agriculture in a large scale in our state, and we would have lots of difficulties, lots of constraints due to the natural scenario. Well, you are a kite surfer, right? What you observe nowadays, Ceará, with constant and strong winds, with a great sun sunlight potential. So it brings a lot of potential to the photovoltaic, to the solar energy generation. We have technology used in the cutting edge technology for agribusiness, and we are a great exporter of fruits. And I would like to comment on this hydric situation. Last week, we've had some news about the integration of the San Francisco River Basin with the north basins of the Northeast, the four states, Ceará, Rio Grande do Norte, Paraíba, and Pernambuco. So the water from the San Francisco Basin arrived to Ceará. Is that it can be an important asset? It can be an important asset to our development? How Ceará have been seen before, and how Ceará will be looked at in the future. Well, Ceará has 34 sites of the Federal Technical Institute in Ceará. The Federal University of Ceará is broadening its sites all over the countryside. And we have qualified manpower, for example, people with technical capacity, not only in the state capital, but in all the municipalities. So this mix of important elements, how can you forecast the great investments in Ceará, how the great corporations in the world, they'll look at Ceará and say, well, there's a promising state, and also not forgetting the governance, the social and environmental questions I said before. Well, your question is very long, but it's very interesting. I think if we focus in the environmental preservation, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean to transform in something static, something stopped in time. If we look at this investment as a knowledge society, all these universities, sites and facilities, if we focus on hydric infrastructure, not only infrastructure, but infrastructure in a broadened point of view, so the digital belt, or to have good roads and highways, a good railroad system. Also, if we have a business person class committed to technology investment, committed to development, committed to a set of activities and actions towards the construction of a big platform of import and exportation, and to the development of the 4.0 industry, I have no doubt Ceará will be a reference to the world and will attract investments to our state. And it's present in the Ceará 2050 plan. It's one of the few states in Brazil thinking in the long term. Even in the crisis environment, when the governor took place in 2015, we've been planning long term. In some states, they could not deal with the short term, but here in Ceará, we could deal with the short term issues, but we also aimed in the long term how to develop and how to develop sustainably. Coming back to your question, there are two words that are very important today. They're present in our mindset, in our social mindset. One is sustainability, the other one is resilience. Well, in these two words, Ceará has a very rich history, developing sustainably, using the natural resources in a way, the scarce resources, in order to keep them. And we are extremely resilient by the same time, because we have these adversities, this in soil and climate, nature constraints. So Ceará can be a great reference in the future due to our history, our trajectory. I recall recently on one discussion when the COVID pandemic started, what people and what we thought, scientists, doctors, political leaders, to end the COVID-19. But now we are thinking about to manage COVID-19. You know, it's impossible to terminate this virus. So once it's established, it's present in nature for good for the rest of our lives, and also the other ones. So you can see other diseases like contagious diseases that ends and they come back. So a virus in nature will be always an existent virus forever. Our job is to learn how to manage this. So the climate thing you told, I don't want to talk about climate changes. I prefer to talk about global heating. That is the cause. We need to focus on the cause. The climate changing is the consequence. But what is causing the climate changes is the primary cause is the global heating. We need to face this issue about the global heating. Once more, the Ceará can consider itself extremely resilient and by the same time to develop in a sustainable way because we have experience to deal with the climate. In the past, we had the intention to finish droughts, but how can I terminate droughts forever? Well, we need to deal with this problem, and we've developed a set of technologies, and we've transformed our semi-arid as in an example to the world, since and our semi-arid is one of the most populous in the world. It's been only possible, and it is possible because of technology and because of our mindset changing and not wanting to terminate droughts, but to manage droughts. And I think this is fundamental. And about global warming, it's a thing of our time. It is difficult to terminate global warming, but it's possible to live with it, to manage it, if we can, as I may say, the correct, the proper, to have the proper attitude, so to face maybe the biggest challenge humankind has ever faced. And Élcio, one of the most important economic activities in Ceará is tourism. It's the industry without smoke. It's a sustainable activity that employs a lot, because in this service sector in Ceará is maybe it will be one of the most employable sectors. Well, the primary sector, for example, agriculture, mining, and cattle raising will employ few people because it's the technology. Also, the secondary sector with informatics, with technology. So it's the third sector, commerce and services, transportation, that will employ more to commerce and services. So the question I make you is, well, Ceará has 573 kilometers of shore, 20 municipalities within this shore, and 3 very close municipalities influenced by this shore. It's one of the biggest shores in Brazil, and we have sunlight all over the year. We have strong and constant winds. We have a pleasant temperature, oscillate from 23 to 31 Celsius degrees, one of the best places in terms of temperature average for tourism. We can do tourism all over the year. And the governor, Camila Santana, took a decision, and you've been a great advocate for the ecological and economical zoning for our shore. So by the end of the year, Ceará will have a modern and advanced, so that has been discussed with all the society, public managers, entrepreneurs, and this zoning will define which areas that we may have investments and other areas that we may preserve, for example, dunes, mangroves, these permanent preservation areas called so-called FPPs. So in your vision, it can be a great instrument, a great attraction to improve and increase investments on tourism, mostly in the shore, so where we have the most part of the activity. So we have inland tourism activities. They are very important. And it seems to me that with the pandemic, people are searching for nature, searching for simplicity, searching for local and local culture and gastronomy. I think it's a great opportunity for Ceará, don't you think? Bruno, I have no doubt about the zoning, the ecological, economic zoning within the shore. I think it's the best instrument we can have to develop states tourism. By the same time, we take advantage of our differentials. Well, Bruno, people are not willing to go to the beach only because they have sun and sea. So we have this in lots of places in the world, and including also the warm waters. We have lots of places with warm waters in the sea. But people come here because of the dunes, because of the communitary living, because of our shore features. If we are not capable to use in a good way our shores, we will destroy them. And something that could last for 200 or 300 and 500 years of sustainable exploitation, it may end in the short term. I'll give you an example. When the governor took place and started his mandate, we are passing through the greatest crisis, drought crisis of our history. You know this. You participate in the contingency group to help Mr. Teixeiras. Well, in some place here in the shore, we have the Uruaú lagoon. They with 3 years totally dry. Someday people told me, because it wasn't a place of my acquaintance. So in a house there are lots of different property value, but why that lagoon has dried totally? Because it was not to dry, but because some people were using water from that lagoon to produce to agriculture, rice, maize, I don't know, or to water their plants, their houses. And up the lagoon, people were closing the streams that fed the lagoon, and people destroyed the lagoon, the Uruaú's lagoon, the main vector of development of that area, and to value the properties around. And so that's an example of not understanding the role of the environmental preservation to you, including to make your assets more valuable. This is a small example to show the potential we have, but how we may be responsible in the process. I told you that economic and ecological zoning in the shore is fundamental because also it makes our systems more righteous. It's one of the best ways to fight against the conduct deviations or systemic corruption, because when the actors, when they know the rules and what they can do, this is the best way, first of all, to make the process equal and even, and to avoid conduct deviation and avoid systemic corruption. So I believe the zoning, I believe tourism, I'm an advocate for this. And Ceará, because of the kite surfing, is recovering lots of beaches that were almost abandoned. So because of kite surf, these beaches are with more tourists, and tourists committed to the environment, committed to have a space where economy, society, and nature, they balance each other. So also, we talked a lot about the beaches and the inlands and the countryside. And I would like you to ask you a question about the urban area. We have only 2 minutes. So good news. The mayor of Fortaleza started to do the Raquel de Queiroz Park in the west zone of the city. The Governor Camilo Santana realized the great dream that is Cocos natural park. And now the City Hall of Fortaleza is starting the Maceió stream, with its urban planning and setting up, and to guarantee that it's a way to guarantee that Fortaleza has green areas and parks. Well, surely to grow and to develop as a vision of long term, because a city may not be think only in the short term because it's expensive, it's unequal, it's not sustainable. The long term city is peaceful, it produces much more equality, it produces much more well-being, it's healthier, and is a city capable to integrate more its citizens. So that's the path we must follow. We can't go back. We need to advance and to make the process quicker. We need to make the future to arrive earlier. That's our commitment. It must be the commitment of all the citizens from the public and from the private sectors. Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent. I think we've concluded, right? Yes, Bruno. Yes. We're done. So let's pass the floor to our master of ceremony, Mauro. Élcio, Bruno, thank you. Thank you to our participants, to this panel. Is Progress the Catastrophe, Artur, Bruno, and Élcio Batista, that delighted us with so much important reflection. So we would like to thank you, our audience that are watching us from Será Global YouTube channel. So please give us lots of thumbs up, lots of likes, and we reinforce the invitation you to take a walk in our digital virtual city available in our platform. Now let's have a small break. One more panel this morning that will be the Northeast of Brazil integrated by the development. We'll be back in a minute.